Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome inside the latest edition of Across the Cavs. He's Noah Nightingale. I'm Zach Weiss. We're talking conference finals. Celtics versus Heat. Kevin Love, let's go. And in the other series, we got LeBron James and the Lakers against Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets. More to come. This is Across the Cavs on Network 216. All right, folks, welcome back. Noah, it's been a minute. Last time we talked was trade deadline. First question has to be, we talked about the Lakers and everything they did, but did you actually expect them to get this far?
No chance. I actually did a favor for myself and checked back on our last podcast when we talked about the Lakers, and we raved about how big of a winner they were and what Rob Pelinka did. And yeah, I mean, I don't think too many people expected this to happen, but the fact that they're here is absolutely crazy and has a lot to do with what they did at the deadline.
And for your Celtics, they're facing the Miami Heat. They're a number 8 seed. Obviously, Kevin Love is there. I'm only going to do this 5 or 6 times. That's it. And for anyone listening on the audio version, it's the City Edition Kevin Love 2018 shirt, orange with the cursive writing with Nike's, I believe, second season doing jerseys. But all my content and everything with Cavs was, can the Cavs have a better record than the Heat come playoff time? No one expects them to get this far. And now they're 4 wins from the finals, man. This has been quite the journey to follow.
When you have great coaching and someone named Jimmy Butler, along with other players, but when you have that, it could take you pretty far. It's honestly, it's really remarkable what the Heat and the Lakers have done from at one point in this regular season. Didn't seem too fun for them, and now they've really turned it around and have gone on some really amazing runs.
And we talk a lot about these undrafted players, and I think to a T, or rather to a point, it's overdone. They have 7 undrafted players. It ties the record for most ever in a series. But some of these guys, Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Haywood Highsmith had a couple of moments while Jimmy was out. Some of these guys have just been so... Gabe Vincent's starting a point guard, for Pete's sakes. They've looked really good, and I think for all the jokes about Pat Riley's age and falling asleep in that meeting, whatever, he, Alonzo Mourning, and everybody else are doing such a good job in that front office organization.
Totally agree with that. Absolutely.
And the coolest part might be, as folks you'll see as today's thumbnail, we're talking about a redo. If you're not watching the bubble in 2020, if you missed it, you decide that's not for me. Well, 3 years later, it's back. It was Heat Celtics then. It was Nuggets Lakers then. Anthony Davis had that 3, which decided game 3 and ultimately the series as the Lakers took care of Denver. I believe it was 4-1. And then on the other side of things, the biggest play of that series when it was close was the Bam Adebayo blocking Jason Tatum's dunk in the last 2 minutes of, I believe, game 1.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about both series. No, we're going to start with the East. But first, right off the bat, do you believe these series now will be better, not just because there's a crowd in home court, will be better than these matchups from 3 years ago? Because the rosters really aren't that much different at the core. The Lakers are remade, but they're still centered on Anthony Davis and LeBron James. The Heat still have Jimmy and Bam. Nuggets still have Jokic and Murray, and the Celtics still have Jalen, Marcus, and Jason.
Yeah, I think, well, it's funny because I think when you talk about the Nuggets and Lakers, everyone talks about the rematch of the bubble and how it went last time where, yeah, it's the same thing for the Heat Celtics, but the Heat Celtics literally played each other in this exact spot last year. So we're all thinking about, as a Celtics fan for myself, we're all thinking about, how different last year is going to be compared to this year. But overall, yeah, I think the fact that it's not going to be in a bubble, there's going to be an amazing crowd in every single game. I just think when you factor that in with all the storylines that have gone on, specifically with the Lakers and the Heat, how they've completely turned around their season, I think these series are definitely going to surpass what we got in the bubble.
Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. My favorite part is that we don't have to stay up until 1 a.m. anymore, man. This has been rough. It's been rough. I couldn't tell you how many games I've fallen asleep during. I made the business decision to sleep during the second half of Warriors-Lakers Game 5, knowing full well I couldn't do it 3 nights in a row. Then it's obviously staying up for Game 6, going to bed at 2 a.m., an hour after the game that depending who you ask, was a letdown, a blowout, and depending who you ask, last night or yesterday afternoon's Game 7 is a letdown / blowout. Half the people watching that obviously wanted the Celtics, and for yourself included, big congrats. But then on the Philly side, was it even worth watching? For the neutral fan like myself, who is still watching every series, but do we want a blowout or do we want something good? It's kind of funny. You think about blowouts as horrible games, but you're still seeing beautiful basketball from half the teams when that happens. So with that said, as we transition from the neutral perspective, I know you were on the Boston perspective, and I'm sure the whole family was loving that one for Mother's Day. Celtics getting the big win, celebrating before. Maybe it was after. I don't know. We didn't talk about that, actually. How do you rate that game from a ratings perspective?
It was a really competitive game pretty much until the start of the third quarter, right? Like the Sixers got off to, I think at one point in the second quarter, it was a 9-point lead. It looked like Boston was really struggling to find any sort of offense. And then all of a sudden, I mean, Jason Tatum was locked in right from the start, but it sort of just like completely fell apart for Philly in terms of offensive perspective. And when they're missing shots, their defense started becoming a lot more lazy. Tatum started getting a lot more open on the pick and rolls. And I mean, we all know Jason Tatum, when he can get going, it's really tough to stop him. Didn't even seem like Philly wanted to even stop him because they were just so distraught from their lack of offense. But I mean, overall, it was a competitive game. It was a competitive series. And the storyline when it comes to the Sixers and the Celtics, like, it was really fascinating. And I thought the series as a whole was really competitive and had a lot of great storylines. But it was a bit disappointing, I think, as a neutral fan, to see the back and forth all series long, just to see the Sixers completely fall apart in the second half. And I know that's kind of the way they've ended a lot of their seasons over the last few years.
Yep.
But I truly believe that this was the best chance. Now, I know we say that all the time, every single year with Philadelphia, but I really thought this was their best chance this year. And I thought they had the roster and the path to get to the finals and to potentially win it. So yeah, it's disappointing to see them just completely fall apart. I think you really wanted a close game, but as a Celtics fan, yeah, I was really happy that I was able to watch the second half, not as stressed as I guess I was expecting to be.
Yeah, and that's a great transition here. One underdog is out, but that doesn't mean that there won't be more. So make sure to sign up for Underdog Fantasy with promo code 216. They'll match your first deposit up to $100. Yeah, Philly, it feels like, Noah, this could be the beginning of what is the end. You know, there are these jokes on Cavs Twitter and Beats comment, note, we had our chance in 2014. We took Andrew Wiggins, ended up with Kevin Love.
James Harden to Houston?
Yes,
we could talk about that another time.
No, he is. James Harden, I think, is going to Houston. There's no reason for him to stay. He completely goofed. Obviously, he had that. It was very nice that he took the pay cut to stay and let them pay other people. But who were those other people? PJ Tucker had that great first quarter, and we don't expect him to score, but his impact was almost invisible for the last three quarters. DeAnthony Melton, that trade was absolutely fantastic, trading an injured Danny Green as the centerpiece to bring him in. He was massive 6'2", but massive nonetheless, playing the 1, the 2, and the 3 throughout the series. He was great. Can't say that about anyone else on the bench. Stands for one Daniel House game. I don't think Paul Reed really had a chance to be good. And there's no center, honestly, in the league except for Andre Drummond. For all the smack I've talked about him over the years, I think he's finally what he had in Chicago in the play-in and end of the regular season was perfect. 10 to 15 minutes. Let him rebound. Let him push. Let him try to get a couple steals, which most bigs don't. Let him finish around the rim. He'll clean up your mistakes. And I think he's the only center that could have – and they had him. Keep in mind that last year they traded him in the Simmons-Harden deal. He's the only backup center that's ever been effective behind Embiid when it mattered. And obviously that was only the regular season. I think, Noah, he's the kind of guy – he's big. If he's going to play 4 minutes in the second and the fourth and that's it because they want to play Embiid 40 minutes, he's perfect for that. Paul Reed had an incredible 2-game stretch where they won both, one against Boston, one against Brooklyn. He was great. He was grabbing every rebound. They're playing through him inside. He was pushing. He was quick. He had the little runner in his game. but he had no chance. And I feel horrible for him. I don't think anyone's blaming him, as they shouldn't. But I don't know why Doc thought that he couldn't play him, why he had to play Embiid all these minutes, even when the games where he was bad. You need Embiid at the end, but those intermediate third and fourth quarter minutes and second quarter minutes, you can give him a longer rest. I think that was part of the downfall is with his knee, and he was just worn out from Al Horford's defense and not being full strength. When he makes his moves, every time he falls, which he still was doing, it hurts a little bit more. Flop or not, you could probably call it a 50-50 split with what's real and what's not. Bench management, I think, from Doc Rivers is the biggest reason among the Harden and the Embiid, and say what you will about Tobias Harris, I still feel like they don't give him enough chances over the course of a game. I think that's the biggest reason on bench mismanagement, why Boston ended up dominating, how they found rhythm, and Boston knew the 7 guys that would make the difference. And Joe Mazzulla outcoached Doc Rivers in a Game 7 at age 34.
Yeah, I guess to add one point there, because I don't know if we want to go too much into this, but I totally agree with your point. I think Paul Reed was fantastic, especially Game 1 in the series when Embiid didn't play. I thought he was one of the biggest reasons why they won. He hit those 4 free throws at the end that pretty much iced the game and gave Philly the win. It's really tough to match up any bench with the Celtics, in my opinion, and a lot of people would agree. I'm sure you will too. Boston is the deepest team in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
I was very shocked that Philly never tried going small, right? And also with Embiid being not 100% healthy, I was very shocked they didn't give more opportunities to Paul Reed. A big part of why that really changed is because Boston, I would say after about Game 4, they really just completely took everything away from the paint. They wanted to push Philly out. Inserting Robert Williams into the starting lineup was absolutely huge because Philly was not testing him as much as they would have tested Al Horford or anyone else in the series. But I do agree. I do agree that, it's really tough to match up and try to, I guess, follow what Boston's bench was able to do. But a big thing for me was Philly not being aggressive at the deadline. I think their one deal that they made was acquiring Jaden McDaniels, who quickly fell out of the rotation. I thought they could have done, I really thought they could have done more. But that was one of the biggest things.
Yeah, Matisse would have helped.
Yeah, right.
There. You could have helped
right?
so much. You could have put him on anybody. You could have gone small and done PJ, Tobias, Matisse, Maxey, and Harden. Been fine.
And it would have been effective. It would have been a lot more effective than what they were putting out there. And again, I think Doc Rivers does deserve blame. Like, he definitely mismanaged the bench for sure. But there just weren't that many guys who in my opinion, at least, were going to impact that series. I know Niang had a few good moments there. Talking about the knee hold. Yeah, right. House had that one incredible game, but it's just like to ask that bench to be consistent for a 7-game series is a really tough ask. And then you got Embiid, who's not 100%, Harden with his issues, not being consistent all the time. It was always going to be tough for Philly, but I honestly thought it was pretty impressive that they were able to push it to 7. I thought that was impressive. But going back to the Paul Reed point, yes, Paul Reed should have had more minutes. He's a great player, and I know Philly loves him. Philly loves him, and he'll get more opportunities. I really hope so.
I think he can somewhere else. But I'll close with this, man. And I think we all forget Jaden Springer. He only played a minute. They were already out of the series. He had a couple of nice jumpers. He looked pretty nice. A. And B, people forget how dominant, and I even forgot this, how good Shake Milton was as a fill-in starter and player early in the season. He's not a difference maker. I'm pretty sure Shake got those extra minutes when they played Boston in the bubble early when Philly got swept because Simmons wasn't playing. Back when that still mattered. And Milton was good then. Mm-hmm. But it is what it is. No more Philly talk. We're going to spend the next 25 or so minutes breaking down these series. Let's go Heat first. Right off the bat, we got some great cross matchups coming. Is Jimmy versus Tatum / Brown what you're most interested in? Are you interested in the bigs battle? in which point guard between Marcus Smart and Gabe Vincent makes the bigger impact, the three-point shooting for both teams in the starting lineup and off the bench. Could it be Kyle Lowry making the difference in the conference finals now that he's healthier than he was last year? No Tyler Hero for a second straight time. Hero, I think, played 2 games in limited minutes at the end of the last series, unplayable in Game 7 a year ago. What are you most interested in for the series, Noah?
To me, when I looked at last year, I thought Miami overall did a very good job at doing the best they can with Tatum and Brown. Obviously, they're 2 incredible players. They're going to get their own. But probably the 2 most successful defenders from last series with those 2 guys were Victor Oladipo, who we know is out for the year, and PJ Tucker, who's a Philadelphia 76er. So I seriously question what Miami's plan and who they're going to throw at those 2 guys. I'm not sure. Obviously, Jimmy Butler is going to be one of them. Jimmy Butler is a fantastic player, and he's going to make life tough for them. But when they're both on the court, I'm very curious to see who the other guy is. And I know Miami is not going to just deal with those guys with, hey, we're going to try to find a defender to guard them one-on-one, because it's going to be a team effort like it normally is when you try to deal with those 2 guys. So that's one thing that stands out to me. I'm very interested to see how Miami is going to deal with those 2 guys, especially how their 2 most successful defenders from last year in the series are now not on the team or not playing. And the other one is more so how Miami is going to create their half-court offense. And I know Jimmy Butler is a fantastic player, and I'm sure he's probably going to have a game in the series where he's going to go over for 40 plus. And I know Bam's going to have a game where he's probably going to have potentially 30. Like, that's just going to happen because it's a typical Heat Celtics series. But I'm very curious to see where Miami is going to go offensively, especially when Boston's able to slow them down. Because I know they have shooters, but they do have a lot of guys who I think Boston are really going to try to force to become options, like a Caleb Martin, who, again, has had some good games in the playoffs, right? Like, I think he had that game against the Knicks where I think he finished the game with over 20 points in a game. Like, they have guys that are capable of scoring, but I think it's Boston is going to really test them and say, like, hey, like, beat us, try to beat us, and we'll see what happens. If you beat us, fine. We'll try to play around that. But that's, to me, my biggest thing is where Miami is going to generate their offense, because I know Boston is going to do everything they can to slow down Jimmy. And the other one is, how they're going to guard Tatum and Brown, because their 2 big names from last year are not going to be there.
So I remember last year, Max Strus was also a big defender. It was the postseason, end of the regular season, where he kind of took over as a starter, joined the starting lineup late in the regular season. Funnily enough, it was for Kevin Love. Now they're starting together. Although I expect Kevin Love to start Game 1, and then if it doesn't work, they'll immediately go. And he's not going to play that many minutes anyway. He'd probably be better in a bench role for this series anyway, although I think they got a lot of options. I think Haywood Highsmith be a good starter candidate just for defense. He can use a couple of fouls, start him, play in the first 5 or 6 minutes. And I think Duncan Robinson is going to be ready to contribute in this series, whereas last year, he was horrible in the playoffs. I guess every postseason he's had good and bad moments. Different role for him, but I think he's been really effective as an option. I know Boston's not going to lose sight as much as the Knicks did, but between him and Lowry and Strus, Martin, Love, they got guys that can knock it down. I think space on the floor is going to be massive. My personal thought would be that Boston goes back to Horford starting to begin the series because they're not facing a monster inside. I think Al can hold Bam just fine, and they can rotate everybody. I think White rejoins, and I think eventually Miami's going to go. I don't know if Lowry joins the starting lineup. They probably keep him in this role until an elimination game, honestly. Mm-hmm. So it would be Vincent and Strus in the backcourt, then probably Butler, Martin, Bam. Could also be Butler and then Highsmith. And then you got Lowry off the bench. You got plenty of options. It's unfortunate they don't have any extras, so the rotation really won't change. The only guy that can join the rotation is on the outside. There's only 2 of them. It would be Yurtsevin, who I don't expect to play, and then Udonis Haslem, who would only come in a blowout. I can't see him getting real minutes. It's not like when OKC would just throw Nick Collison in late in his career and he'd make a difference, age 36, 37. Or whenever Vince Carter's last playoff appearance was. I don't remember how old he was. It was either on Atlanta or Memphis. He was like 38 maybe. But he was still an impact player. Obviously, 38 doesn't mean anything because LeBron is 38. PJ Tucker is pushing 38. Kyle Lowry is nearly 38. but everyone's a different form. Haslam being 42, he will not play. That being said, Boston gets home court advantage, of course, as the 2 seed. They're playing an 8 seed Miami. On the Heat side of things, other than Jimmy Butler, which guy, Noah, has to be able to set the tone for them from the beginning as that aggressive, defensive-minded guy that's going to get them enough stops to be in it for the last 5 minutes of games and to be able to get Jimmy to do his thing?
Yeah, easy. It's Kyle Lowry. It's 100% Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry has had a lot of success against the Celtics in the past. He sets the tone. He's going to create the pace for them. A lot of people thought he was completely washed, including me. And so far, from what we've seen from Miami, not just Kyle Lowry, they're just saving their legs for the playoffs. They didn't really care too much about the regular season. But that's a guy who can dictate the offense, can move the ball. He's a great facilitator. I think in the Knicks series, he had 5+ assists in every single game. Like, he's just that type of guy. He's a guy who's capable of knocking down shots, creating his own. He's just really tough. And like, you watch games when you play against Kyle Lowry, he's the type of guy where you absolutely love him if he's on your team, but you hate him if he's against you, because he just does a lot of stuff that is going to help his team. He makes winning plays. And as a Celtics fan and as anyone who's playing against the Heat, you just hate that, because there's so many little things he does that just impacts winning for Miami. So for sure, I think he's going to be a huge, huge guy to take away, because I truly believe if you can limit Kyle Lowry, if you can take away a lot of the things that he does, Miami just does not have that many options to create offense. When you can slow down Miami, that you're already doing yourself a huge favor by slowing them down, forcing them to score in a half-court set. When you talk about the Celtics defense, this is a Celtics defense that is really hard to score in the half-court set. I know their defense has kind of fallen down a little bit in the playoffs. They really struggled against Atlanta with the quick guards like Trae Young and Dejounte Murray, and they struggled at times in the pick and roll, came to Harden and Embiid. But this might be a slightly easier series. I don't want to say easier, because I don't want to discredit anything that Miami does, but you slow down Miami, you are putting yourself in a really good spot if you're the Celtics, because you have a lot of guys to match up with. But you just got to take away a lot of what Kyle Lowry does, and a lot of what he does is pushes the pace and makes Miami play fast, and that's what they want to do. So to me, like, Jimmy's going to be Jimmy, Bam's going to be an impact, and they're probably going to have a few games where guys like Strus or Duncan or Caleb Martin or Gabe Vincent, they're going to shoot really well from deep. But if you could take away Kyle Lowry, like, you are really forcing Miami to dig deep to look for offense.
Yeah, Kyle Lowry's been a huge defensive presence, as mentioned. Noah, a block in 7 of the last 9 games they've played, including 4 in the first game against the Knicks. He had at least 6 assists in 3 of the games, 11-4, 9 with 3 steals and a block, and the last one off the bench. 31 minutes is the most he's played in the postseason, which matches his regular season average. Very different role. Lowry had quite the career before he even got to Toronto. He spent 4 seasons in Houston. I didn't even know it was 4 seasons. I thought it was less back in the days of him. Actually, it was, 4 seasons. He was competing for minutes with Goran Dragic back in those days, and Aaron Brooks. He was solid. 3.5 seasons, rather. And that was parts of 4 seasons. That's not the point. He had to wait a while to become that guy. He gets to Toronto, and Jose Calderon is still there. And then finally, when we get to that 13-14 team is when he really started to turn his career around. He averaged at least 17 points a number of times since. Became the Hall of Famer he was, starting in year 8, essentially. Works his tail off. Fantastic teammate. Say what you will about the flopping. I think he's better than a lot of other guys, at least, as far as when he does it. I think he actually it's hard to say that one guy who kind of exaggerates gets more contact than others when they do it, but I'm more inclined to believe Kyle Lowry than a lot of other players in the league. To be honest, I don't know. He just, to me, he's always been likable. Although a lot of people say otherwise. Had those series against the Cavs, but there was never, at least not that I remember, never any moments where it's like, I hate this guy. Always loved him. I'm always going to remember Kyle Lowry as the guy that hit the game-tying half-court shot at the buzzer when he was like 3 for 19 from the field for the Raptors against, I want to say it was Miami.
Yeah, it was. In game one. Game 1 against Miami in Toronto.
But they lost in overtime after that, didn't they?
They did.
They did. But they won the series.
In 7.
There you go. But no, I really like him. I agree that he's the X factor. I've really enjoyed watching that Heat Knicks series, how he set the table for Martin and Robinson, the dribble handoffs, and honestly, I've always known him to be a shot maker, but he's not going to do it for a long stretch. There were those fourth quarters against the Knicks where he'd come in with like 2 points, end up with 15 or 16. What he does really well of is kind of dribbling around, kind of how Dellavedova does it. And yes, of course, there's a comparison here. Just the way I always admired the way he runs an offense is the way he pounds the ball, but he's always looking. He's very rarely getting it stolen, so he keeps it really close. Lowry's very similar. Lowry actually has a jump shot package, so he can do that. He can get to the top of the key. He evaluates his options. And for a 6-footer, he is one tough dude. I think he is going to make the difference. And my thoughts on Boston are, I expect an 8-man rotation for the series. I do expect Grant Williams or Sam Hauser, probably Grant, get a couple of spot minutes in the beginning of the series and, see where it goes. Peyton Pritchard got that opportunity. I think it was game 5 to kind of come in when the team needed to push. Was it 5 or 4? I think it was 5.
5.
It was game 5. I do expect he'll play. He's been here a while. I think Missoula really does like him. There's some guys just got to tell, stay ready. They will. I think Tatum is going to cool off for the first couple of games after what he just did. Obviously, playing on the same court might help, but stakes a little raised. Miami isn't going to get beat by the same player every night. It's going to have to be a team effort on Boston's part. And I think that what they should be doing, and call me crazy for this, as good as some of his games have been, Bam Adebayo still has no bag. His mid-range shot is inconsistent as anyone I've ever seen in my life. I would be trying to make Bam beat you just above the free throw line. If you get him that ball 17 feet out, make him catch a couple feet farther back, make him beat you. He can play make, don't get me wrong. He's an all-star for a reason, all defense. And he's good. He's very good. I think he's a triple-double in these playoffs. But if he's the one that's going to have to beat you, you should be okay. You're getting it out of Jimmy's hands. You're getting it out of Kyle's hands. You're getting it out of Martin or Vincent, who'd probably be, other than Lowry, Bam, and Jimmy, the only other ones who could make a play with it. You make him beat you. You have Horford on him. Smart and White do so well, and Jalen too. Jason, so, staying with cutters and moving around the perimeter. I think that's their ticket to a 5 or 6 game series win, getting them to their second straight finals.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of those points. I think when you go to the rotation, for example, Grant Williams is 100% going to be in this rotation. I'd be stunned if he wasn't, mainly because Grant Williams, I don't know if you know the story. It's been mentioned a bunch of times when they play each other, but back in high school, Grant Williams was actually known as the Bam Stopper when they were in high school. And obviously they've had 2 different Eastern Conference finals to play against each other, and Grant Williams has gone run in both and has played pretty damn well. So I do expect him to get back into the rotation. I do think that potentially Sam Hauser is going to be in there because we all know Miami loves to run in zone. Boston's not that great against the zone, so they're going to try to spread out. Boston's going to try to spread out as much as possible, and I think Sam Hauser is going to be one of the options where they put in when they go against the zone. So, yeah, I think a 8-man rotation is probably correct. It could even stretch out to 10 at one point because Peyton Pritchard is also another guy who's had success against Miami in the past, is a guy who you can put in when Miami does run the zone. But as far as the Bam situation goes, like, you're absolutely right. If we're going to be forcing Bam to try to score on us every single time, pretty much anyone that's not Jimmy, like, that is a win, right? And I'm not saying that Miami doesn't have the guys who are capable to do that. They are. But for a 7-game series, can you ask them to do that for 4 straight times and have that lead to a win? I don't believe so. And I think that's where the depth situation comes, where you have a really deep Boston team, then not so deep Miami team. And going back to what your point earlier, I think you mentioned that you do believe that Derek White will come back into the starting lineup instead of Robert Williams. I actually think, to go to more so to your point of what you said about Bam, try to force him around the free throw line, I think that's going to heavily involve Robert Williams also playing in there. Like, I don't think he'll be the primary defender against Bam. I think it will be a Horford. But having Rob in there kind of being the roamer is going to make Miami try to settle from outside. And I think there are certain guys, depending on the Miami matchup or the lineup that they put out, there are going to be certain guys where Miami or that Boston can put Rob on and just sort of let him roam. Like last year, I don't know if they're going to do it again this year, but last year they let Caleb Martin shoot whatever he wanted. And they didn't really contest him that much. They sort of just said, hey, we will live with you if you want to beat us. And I would not be shocked if Robert Williams gets the Caleb Martin assignment and starts roaming. And Boston will say, hey, you want to beat us? Go ahead, try to beat us. Not sure if they'll do it again, but it's an option. And I actually think they will do it. And I think specifically Robert Williams should have a very, very big impact in this series. And I think a lot of that is just going to be trying to take Miami away from the paint, try to take a Jimmy Butler or a Bam away from that and try to force them to score elsewhere.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. There's a lot to keep an eye on as these teams get ready 2 days away. And to your point on Grant Williams, he was a much bigger part of the rotation last postseason, but his minutes in the series were 34, 32, 39, 36, 23, 17, and 30. So obviously there was that close game 7. The Celtics had 3 other blowout wins. Their losses were in games 1, 3, and 6. So it'll certainly be fun to see how everything goes down. That road game 7 win was certainly impressive. And so we come to the end of the series. We got Nuggets next. Noah, make your prediction, and I will follow suit.
Everything I've pretty much have said has impacted or favored Boston. I think the matchup really favors Boston. I think the depth favors Boston. Not coaching, definitely not coaching, because I don't think you'll find a single coach. And that's no slight on Joe Mazzulla. That's just Eric Spoelstra, just being Eric Spoelstra.
Mazzulla's only 34. Spoelstra's got 30. It seems like 34 years of experience with the Heat.
And he's just unbelievable. Like, he's going to find a way to limit Boston. And because it's a typical Miami-Boston series, I don't care what the matchups are. I don't care who's on the floor. This is going to go 7 games. And, I'm going to take the Celtics. I just think talent-wise, depth-wise, they are better than Miami. I expect Miami to make it really tough on them. It'll probably be a very close 7-game series, just like it was last year, where even that game 7 will be very, very close. But in the end, I'm taking the Celtics to go back to the NBA Finals.
I'll go Celtics in 6. Good analysis there. Obviously, personally, I'd love to see Kevin Love, who's never lost a playoff series in the East. 12-0 in Cleveland, 2-0 in Miami. Obviously, it's a stat you can only use for so long, just like James Jones going to 8 straight NBA Finals. I think it was 7, and he retired. But James Jones retired, having been to 7 straight NBA Finals, picking up 3 titles. Not a bad way to go out. I am going to go Celtics in 6, much as I'd love to see Miami. I can't pick with my pro Kevin Love bias here. Not going to have a big impact. He talks about his outlet passes, but push comes to shove, you got the Jays. We know what they're both capable of. Jimmy's great, but he can't match what the 2 of them can do unless he does it for the entire game. But we know the only way he can play 46, 47 minutes is when he does it for stretches. He's not going to take possessions off, but he knows he has to pick his spots because he's not a sniper. He can hit 3 or 4 threes in a game if they give him the space, but I don't expect that. And now we're going to go to series number 2. Spend a little less time on this one. The Celtics one was the higher point of focus. But Cavs legend LeBron James in his second LA Conference Finals. The first was in the bubble, going against Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. All jokers aside, Noah, we got a great big man matchup. And I think whatever we think about LeBron and Murray and the Nuggets' incredible young rotation, or the Lakers and their defensive masterclasses, or the hit or miss D'Angelo Russell, or Dennis Schroeder, all of a sudden this guy that's we've never seen on the big stage like this. It's going to come down to the bigs. If AD is healthy, it's going to be very hard for the Nuggets to win. But regardless of if he is, I still think Nikola Jokic, second-team All-NBA, still the best player in the league, no matter what the MVP award says. It's still going to be impossible to stop. It doesn't mean they're going to win, but he will not be stopped, not even by Anthony Davis, in my opinion.
Anthony Davis is one of the greatest defenders I have ever seen. I've been a basketball fan for pretty much my entire life, for 26 years, and he is one of the most impressive defensive players I have ever seen. I don't think, even how great he is, this is going to be really hard to stop Jokic. And that to me is the biggest thing. Like, when I look back to their series in the bubble, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, their primary defender on Jokic actually wasn't even Anthony Davis. It was Dwight Howard, correct? Or Dwight Howard probably had the most success on Jokic.
Yeah, Dwight gets under people's skin.
Yeah, and the the Lakers of Simbular, the Simbular Dwight Howard scuffle in Taiwan.
Oh
Yeah, but
Yeah,
the
Dwight Howard.
Lakers don't have a Dwight Howard on this roster. They don't have that body that they can actually throw on Jokic. Yes, Anthony Davis is Anthony Davis, but if you put AD on Jokic, you are pulling AD out of the paint. And that is going to create so much room and space for these Nuggets shooters and players to start running backdoor cuts and just get easy points every single time against this Lakers. Like it's putting AD on Jokic is tough because you are really taking him out of the paint because Jokic could just sit back at the 3-point line and start facilitating and doing his thing, right? And when you look at the other options, especially when AD's off the floor, like who is guarding Jokic, right? Vanderbilt, I think, is too small. Rui's not going to be able to do it. Like what? Wenyen Gabriel, Mo Bamba, is Mo Bamba even healthy?
Mo
I
Bamba's
don't
a good
know.
option, actually. But I'll say this, and I'll let you continue. I expect Davis to be on the court for 98% of Jokic's minutes. Personally.
Agreed. And again, I'm not saying Anthony Davis can't do anything against them. I just think that is a very tough matchup for him. As great as a defensive player as he is, that is a very, very tough matchup. And I think there is an issue if he is going to be guarding Jokic one-on-one, where he may be taken away from the play. And obviously he's arguably the best rim protector in the league. So it's tough. It's tough. Denver's got a lot of options to beat the Lakers defense. And obviously that's anchored around Anthony Davis. So that to me is the biggest thing is what is Los Angeles going to do and how are they going to stop Jokic? And the answer is they may not. That really, and that's honestly the answer I'm thinking of right now.
No one can.
The
Suns did, and the Suns were stopping him, and they still were losing. Well, they weren't stopping him per se. They got him get 50 and 10. They won, but they still got shown all the weaknesses. Now here's the second part. We talk about Davis on Jokic. Can Jokic stop AD, or is the Nuggets still have enough firepower? Like, let's say you have an off day combo from MPJ and KCP. What if both of them are off? Because I thought they'd do it last round. Denver stuck with the 8-man rotation now for 2 rounds. It's just Jeff, Christian Brown, and Bruce Brown. No Reggie Jackson, no Ish Smith, no Thomas Bryant, who hasn't even seen a garbage minute in the playoffs, no DeAndre, no Zeke, no Chanchar. All, honestly, with the exception of DeAndre, no disrespect, and Thomas Bryant, I guess, they could all come in and make an impact. But nonetheless, Aaron Gordon's gotten the backup 5 minutes. So can AD do enough? And then if Jokic can't stop AD and the wings are having an off day, could Denver overcome that and win games in Mile High?
So that's the thing, right? I think when I say I don't think the Lakers can stop Jokic, I think their main concern is we just got to hope we can stop everyone else, which is hard because Jokic is so good at involving everyone and creating for everyone. But that may be the Lakers' option defensively is, hey, we just got to hope that the shooters just have bad nights and we can recover and rotate properly. But in terms on the other end, unless Anthony Davis is going to start shooting like he did in the bubble, where he's going to force guys to pull out and put Jokic in the perimeter, I think Jokic will be fine, right? Like, I think Anthony Davis does most of his work inside, and I think Denver should. I mean, it's much easier said than done because Anthony Davis is great, and you have a lot of great ball handlers who can find Anthony Davis the ball and put him in great situations. But I think unless AD starts really punishing Denver from outside in the perimeter, and I'm not just talking about 3-pointers, I'm just talking about more mid-range shots and all that kind of stuff, like that's what's going to cause a lot of issues to Denver. I think if Anthony Davis is going to want to sit in the paint, he's going to have success, but not the success that I think is going to change the overall outcome of the series, if you know what I mean.
And then the bigger question, he's 38. We clearly saw in Game 6 against the Warriors, maybe for the first time all postseason, it was his night. For a lot of these games, as good, not great, as good as the King has been, everyone else has had his back. But he's been healthy the whole time. He's taken on bigger minutes than he has in his entire Lakers career, even the year he was the point guard, which was obviously the last time they won. Is this his last chance to add another title to his resume this season?
I believe so. I believe this is his last chance. Because the way I think about it is if he wins this year, that's number 5, right? And now he's got essentially 1, 2 more chances left at trying to get to 6 and tying MJ. Which I think if he wins 5, I think there's a really good chance he wins 6 because I think LeBron will do everything he can to get 6, but he's got to get 5 first. And listen, I've been a fan for a very long time. As I said many times, I am a huge Celtics fan. There are quite a few things I've learned as a basketball fan, as a Celtics fan. And one of them is I don't care how old he is. I don't care where the guy is. You just don't bet against LeBron James. I've done it many times, and every single time I have failed. I will not doubt this guy at all. He's the king. I know he's not 100%, and I know he's 38, and everything's pushing against him. I can't doubt him. And if this series goes 6 or 7, which I assume it will, just because I don't think, I think all the matchups are favoring Denver. Almost everything is favoring Denver, coaching, depth, all that kind of stuff. But if this goes 6 or 7, which I assume it will, because I don't think the Lakers are bad enough to lose in 5 or 4. But if it goes 6 or 7, I think that's when you see the brilliance of LeBron. And it's just really tough to bet against him in that situation where the opportunity is right there for him to take. So, yeah, I do think that, so to answer your question, yes, I do think this is his last chance. I think if they don't win the title this year, I think he'll finish his career at 4. But if he wins this year, I think the chances at 6 are pretty damn high. So,
okay,
I don't know.
Before we make our predictions, this is how we'll wrap this up. I'll run through some quick numbers from these stars. The last series these guys had 3 years ago, AD was only 26, averaged 31, 6, and 3. The Lakers, the team, averaged 5 blocks. Dwight Howard led them with 1 per game. Davis and LeBron averaged about 52% of the team's points. LeBron 27, 10, and 9. KCP was the third leading scorer at 9. And then on the Nuggets side, Murray averaged 25, 7, and 4. 25, 4, and 7, Jokic 22, 7, and 5. Denver 46 of 137 from three-point range. That's 33.6%. From the Lakers, they hit 35% of their threes, making 49 out of 142. That was with Danny Green, Alex Caruso, and Rajon Rondo, along with KCP and Kuzma. Denver had Jeremy Grant, Paul Millsap, and Gary Harris starting with Murray and Jokic at that time. MPJ was coming off the bench. It was his first real season in the league. They had Monte Morris, and then they used Mason Plumlee for the backup minutes. He was very ineffective. He was still shooting free throws at righty, but yet he went 3 for 4, and Torrey Craig and PJ Dozier had that one game with fourth quarter minutes. I wish they still had Gary Harris. I don't care that he averaged 4 points in that series. He's still a great player in the league, and I hope he's in the playoffs next season so we can appreciate him. All this said, they're meeting again. It's 3 years later. It sounds like, no, you're picking LeBron and the Lakers to come out of the West as a number 7 seed and facing your Celtics. Everyone gets the Lakers-Celtics finals they wanted?
Yeah, it's very similar where I said everything's favoring Boston in the other series to win that in 5 or 6, even though I'm taking it 7 because that's just how it's going to work. And the way I'm saying it here is everything I've said has favored Denver, how they are going to cause a lot of issues for the Lakers and how they don't have an option for Jokic. But I think the series is going to go 6 or 7. And if you get that to a 6 or 7, game 6 or 7, you'll see the King do his work. I don't know how. I don't know what they're going to do, but it's going to happen. I'm taking the Lakers in 7.
All right. So last round, I neglected a prediction because I reeled with Brett Usher 2 weeks ago today. I had no idea how to predict after what the Warriors had just done, what they did last year compared to the Lakers, who took out a team that was small. And look, a series win is a series win. It's a 7-2. Best home court team in the league, losing several times in Memphis. But Ja was playing. Jaren Jackson was playing. That's your all-star. And we're not talking about Ja with what's happening now, but what happened a month ago on the court. Jaren Jackson was the DPOY, for better or worse. I don't think he deserved it, but that's not the point here. There's 2 all-NBA talents. And you still had Dylan Brooks, who gets under your skin. Well, ended at that. You have one of the best three-point shooters in the world in Desmond Bane. You have the best backup point guard in the NBA and best assist-to-turnover ratio in the league in Tyus Jones. Of course, number 2 is likely his brother Trey. I'm sure you love that as a Duke guy. And there was enough, and they got absolutely manhandled. All these teams that are getting knocked out by the lower seeds are getting knocked out with oomph. with the exception of the Knicks Heat. Suns got blown out to get bounced. The Warriors got blown out to get bounced. The Sixers got blown out to get bounced. And in this series, pardon the train going by in the background if it is audible, this series is going to end like this. Nikola Jokic is going to show what Joel Embiid couldn't do and do it. He's getting to a finals. It's going to be Boston versus Denver. And we're going to get the first chance of a team that can actually have a real chance of stopping Jokic. No disrespect to AD, but he's going to be alone. Because they're not going to start Vando. They're probably going to start Schroeder, which makes sense. So you can guard everybody else. LeBron can help a little. I don't know how much contact we're going to get away with. No disrespect to however the playoffs have been called, but I do feel like certain players at a certain level get away with certain things a little more. So I think they're going to be allowed to be a little more physical with Jokic. I still don't think it'll stop him. I think his arms are going to be blood red by the end of each quarter of this series. But I got Denver in 7. I'll give you that. It's going to go 7, and LeBron can do everything he wants. LeBron is great in these Game 7s, except for 2008, unfortunately. For me, fortunately for you. Yes. Paul Pierce, give him credit. Now, Paul Pierce did just say, duh, to Jason Tatum being better than him. So full respect to Paul Pierce for being off ESPN now, last couple of years, being an NBA realist, not just a agenda Celtic pusher, but being honest about his career. So credit. I still love Paul Pierce when he doesn't play the Cavs. I think his tenure with the Wizards reminded us one last time. Very few guys go to a second team and get redemption at the end of a career. Third team, I guess, after the Brooklyn. And he still had a playoff moment. Let's not forget. But Nuggets in 7. LeBron won't get it this year. And I think regardless of who's right here, Noah, when we're starting to do these again when the NBA Finals start up, going to be a lot to talk about. I'm looking forward to see who ends up being right, who ends up on the bottom side.
As long as we are correct about the Eastern Conference side, that's all I care about. So
I am happy to be wrong. I am happy to be wrong. One more flex for Kevin Love. It was really funny. I was playing ball last week. Obviously, I'm not in Cleveland. As you guys know, I'm in Jersey. Someone's like, "Oh, who's 0?" I'm like, really? I mean, shout out Jeff McInnes. He's been on the pod. He's the only Cavs number 0 to ever to be on the pod. Maybe we'll get CJ Miles in the future. That would be great. But this isn't a Jeff McInnes. That would be cool. I would have loved to have a Jeff McInnes shirt. I'm sure I could find one somewhere. I'm not going to go to the source. I'll get it myself. But nonetheless, Noah, pleasure having you, and I can't wait for these games this week. It's going to be a weird off night tonight, but I think it allows us, as yesterday did and the night before, fix our sleep schedules before staying up till midnight every night watching these games.
It's the best time of the year, Zach. I'm very excited for this. I'm sure you're very excited for this. I can't believe we're already back. June's coming, NBA Finals. It's amazing. This year has flown by, but it's been an unbelievable season, and always having the chance to chat up with you. It's always a pleasure. So thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure indeed. June is coming. Game of Zones is coming back, ladies and gentlemen. So stay tuned. He's Noah Nightingale. I am Zach Weiss. We will see you on Thursday. Braden Todd joins the program. Peace.